I know you can't talk specific deals, but overall, we've had a pretty encouraging M&A flurry in 2020. Is it just going to accelerate into next year?
No, good morning, Francine. Look, this is obviously the time of the year where M&A bankers are usually very, very bullish about the year ahead. But I think with global M&A volumes now up 35% since July over the same period last year, there are good reasons. And it's really like not only that volumes are up, we've seen like 4 mega deals in every month since July. And with mega deals, we mean like deals above 10 billion. And there are absolutely no signs of this pace slowing down. It's really like across all regions and across all industries. And it's driven by three things. Number one, the acceleration, I think, in domestic consolidation. And that is true for banking, energy, real estate, and telecoms. Secondly, we've seen a kind of an increase in cross-region. That's mainly healthcare and tech, but also industrials. And finally, we've managed to create the first European champion with a kind of combination of Nexi, Nets, and SIA. This is a theme we've called for a long time ago and which finally became reality. So I think we now have really a blueprint for more. And what's different to the past, that there's now also a strong political desire across the European governments to create more European champions. So if you add to that on top that in 2020 we have a record year for tech privates with over 80 billion of announced deals, you can see that there clearly won't be a long Christmas break for M&A bankers.
Yeah, I'm sure there's no Christmas break, right? What's Christmas if you're an M&A banker? Dirk, when you look at a lot of, you said that this is cross-sector and cross-region, but actually a lot of that M&A was pushed by the U.S. When will it really come to Europe? And are there sectors that are really ripe for consolidation? Is it banks? Is it something else?
Look, it's not just the U.S. I think when you look at the last couple of months, it has been very healthy. Yes, the U.S. is always driving the U.S. M&A market globally, and the U.S. has been more active in the M&A kind of sphere in the past with volumes more or less double that of Europe. But clearly Europe had to catch up, and I think that's what we are seeing now. And if you look back at 2020, there have been a number of European companies that really with global ambitions that went ahead and made some pretty bold moves into the U.S., some of them in the middle of the crisis. So I don't think it's just a kind of U.S. topic. It's really a global topic, a lot of activity in Asia, a lot of activity in the U.S., but also here in Europe.
If you look at UK companies, they've mostly been targets of North America, but also private equity suitors. Do you see that trend changing anytime soon?
There's always been a strong link between the US and the UK, so I think that is something which is not new, and that will continue. So from that point of view, clearly the uncertainty around Brexit maybe has held back UK M&A, which had maybe not the strongest of all years. But even there, the last couple of months have seen a lot of activity, especially on the P2P front, and I think there's definitely more to come.
From where? And does Brexit change the fortune of the UK?
Look, it's not just Brexit, okay? I think as I said before, the trend at the moment is really across industries and across regions. So it's not just driven by one single factor. What we are really seeing is that in this environment, scale has become more important. Top-line growth is tough to get. A lot of companies struggle to really deliver the kind of implied growth assumptions. And that's where M&A comes in. With M&A, you really have the chance to increase your margins and drive your bottom line. And I think that's a theme that holds irrespective of Brexit. And that's why I think in the UK, we will also continue to see a very kind of healthy M&A pipeline.
We're seeing various European deal makers setting up SPACs now. Are there enough targets in Europe for these vehicles to really get to work?
Oh, look, when you look at the US IPO market, clearly 2020 was the year of the SPAC. And we have at the moment have over 180 SPACs looking for investments. They raised 65 billion of capital. And I think in November alone, we have seen 10 SPAC mergers, and year to date over 80. So far, that has been all US, but I think your question is right. There's clearly the risk of a certain imbalance between supply and demand, and that's why we are now seeing SPACs looking outside of the US for targets, and that's why in 2021, SPACs will also become a topic in Europe as more and more SPACs that were initially raised in the US are going to look for targets in Europe. And I think then we also have now seen the first kind of European SPAC. So this is clearly something that will stay, and it has created a complete new group of buyers that have become an important kind of component of the M&A market.
Dirk, very quickly, are you expecting activism to come back in 2021 in Europe, or is this something that
absolutely? I think there are really two things. Yeah, I think there are two things. Number one, we've seen a big increase in shareholder engagement, not just by activists coming back, but by also traditional investors becoming much more outspoken and vocal. But even more interesting, private equity has become more aggressive and in certain situations now acts like an activist, whereas activists, on the other hand, start to operate, or at least some of them, more like a private equity firm. So that really means they're not just buying stakes, they're also like making bids for divisions or looking for ways to cooperate with private equity. So for companies, especially those that somehow lost their path during the crisis, that could mean in 2021, they're suddenly being approached both by private equity and an activist at more or less the same time. So from that side, going to be very interesting to see how that develops.